my life went from zero to hero, in the sense that, I started off, before coming to meeting Krishna consciousness, I was a total loser. I dropped out of college. I was just doing nothing. And as far as society was concerned, this guy is a total loser. And then when I came to Krishna conscious movement, the devotee said, no, you're interested in Krishna consciousness. You're Bahunam Janma, you're out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. You're a rare soul. And then if you try to give Krishna consciousness to other people, you're doing the greatest welfare work that you could possibly do for human society. So it was kind of like, as I said, I went from zero to hero. And so I'm very grateful to Prabhupada, and aside from, that's on a very, as I said, very kind of almost mundane level, practical level. But aside from that, I've been in the movement trying to follow Prabhupada's instructions for 47 and a half years. And, I can't say that I haven't experienced anything encouraging in the course of doing that. I have. And, sometimes, you feel a taste for chanting, feel enlivened, mildly blissful. So that's there. So, that's my genuine appreciation of Srila Prabhupada. He's the person who saved my life, even on a total material level. And he's given me a philosophy that enables me to make sense out of life, to keep living in a positive way with enthusiasm. I'm optimistic. I'm happy with my life as it is now. It could always be better. We're in the material world. But I feel, all things considered, I'm feeling like, wow, this is great, And I feel optimistic about the future. I feel optimistic about, the proposition that if I just keep following Prabhupada, just the basic things, just like chanting Hare Krishna. And actually, I'll give you an example. I won't read all those papers, but I will give you an example. Something I've recently been taking shelter of that. This is like my relationship with Prabhupada. These different things I come across when I read, and this is an excerpt from a purport Prabhupada wrote to the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 24, Text 42. So just read a couple sentences. He says here, the word manave indicates the perfection of all kinds of mantras. The mantra delivers the conditioned soul from his bondage. So simply by chanting the mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, one can gain deliverance from any condition. So that's very basic, right? Very foundational understanding of Krishna consciousness. It's kind of like what it's saying is that you just chant Hare Krishna. It's not talking about the quality there or the quantity, but the principle, just chanting Hare Krishna is the solution to all problems of life. Prabhupada's saying, by chanting Hare Krishna, one can gain deliverance from any condition. So, this is something I'm taking shelter of. I chant my rounds in the morning. Sometimes I just, well, be honest, all the times I open up to it and I just look at it and I just remind myself, this is it. Don't worry about anything else. Forget about everything else. Don't think about anything else. Don't try to think about anything. Don't try to nothing. Just focus on the chanting. Just get into the chanting. I tell myself, if I just do that, just get into this chanting and everything else is going to work out. And it's consistent with what Krishna says at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Machchita sarvadorgani, Machchita sarvadorgani, matprasada tarishati, that if you become conscious of me, you'll overcome or surpass all the difficulties of conditioned life. So it's the same idea. This is specific, just specifically, applying to chanting Hare Krishna. So, like that, it's very wonderful. Prabhupada, he made that big sacrifice, total strangers. Of course, he was, doing it on the instruction of his spiritual master. But we benefited so much. At least I feel I've benefited so much as a result of coming in contact with Srila Prabhupada. It's like, made a complete night and day difference in my life. And, So as I said, I'm grateful that he saved my life. I'm appreciative for the life I have now, and I'm optimistic that if I just keep following the basic stuff that Prabhupada's told us to follow, that it's just going to keep getting better and better. And even to be honest with you, it's ironic, but these last 10 months are confirmation of that, because even without really having the opportunity to go out on book distribution like we normally do with going and meeting people and getting donations, we're doing some sort of a simulation of book distribution, myself and Prema Sankirtan. But it's been good. I mean, even without that, just coming to the basic things of just getting up and coming to the morning program and doing some type of activity for Krishna and taking prasadam and associating with the devotees, and it's very, very happy and satisfying lifestyle. If I had to do exactly this for the rest of my life, I would feel, okay, great, it's terrific. So anyway, I just wanted to express that, my genuine appreciation for Srila Prabhupada for saving my life and giving me a life, and it just keeps getting better and better. And I know I give all the credit to Srila Prabhupada, and thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai. Would anybody like to speak second?
Yeah. You can. Okay.
Thank you. I got talking to Prabhupada. Uh-oh. Help. Okay. Thank you. Dear Srila Prabhupada, thank you for being so present each morning as we worship you during your gorgeous Guru Puja ceremony. The fact that your Guru Puja is still going on in all your temples means you are truly the Jagat Guru, founder Acharya of the Krishna Conscious Society. Today I reflect on the day you left us and realize the shock was unbearable. Somehow we all thought you would stay longer. You were forming an army against Maya and raising Brahmins. On your departure, you called for all your disciples, but unfortunately we weren't told how you must have felt when you asked where we were. So we never got your last instructions. Speaking for myself, realizing much needed guidance and realization when I needed to exist in this material world, luckily, your words are printed in your books. You formed a spiritual society which we could serve. Now I'm praying for unity. As we get older, we must pass this knowledge to the next generation so they can continue your worship. You paved the way for all generations to come. You gave us the formula, your books, and the standard to worship properly. In my unworthy attempt to serve you, there is so much failure. Please forgive me and continue to shower your mercy upon me. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for your love and kindness. So praying today that someday I will be able to serve you nicely. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Dear Srila Prabhupada, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to your divine grace on this your disappearance day. Kindly accept this verse offering. Is it so soon again November? How quickly time does flow. I do not want to remember the day you had to go. But now it has come upon us as a virus stalks the land. I have to say, if I'm honest, I don't completely understand. But there is one thing I do know with certainty as true, that if your orders I follow, I will always be with you. Tadvidi pranipatena, pariprashnena sevaya, upadekshanti te jnanam, jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. I promise to surrender at your lotus feet, to question and to render you service that's complete. Because you see truth absolute, you are of it in the know. And when you judge me enough astute, that truth to me you will show. Your disciple, Judakarma Das. I just did. It's an offer. To me, it's an offering to Srila Prabhupada, not an opportunity for me to lecture.
So I wrote a couple of songs. One is recycled. One will be recycled from last Vyasa Puja. I played the recording, but a lot of the devotees said they couldn't really hear the lyrics in the music. So I'm just going to read that one, recite it, and then there's another one that you may hear the recording of later, and I'll read that one also. So the first one is the recycled one called You Are the Only One. Srila Prabhupada, I never had the chance to walk beside you, but I found you in my dreams. And there, I held your cloak and hat as you took up your cane, and we both walked down the stairs. Yesterday, a young man came who'd lost his place, said he didn't really know what he believed at all. I told him all I had were the words of your divine grace. Then he took his brand new beads and went dancing down the hall. I know I haven't done the best I could to serve you. Let illusion crumple me. Even though I'm fallen and diseased, you never let me down, always gave your best to me. Suddenly my mountains turn to sandhills I could climb. Something deep inside of me awakens to your voice. Mysteries, perplexing secrets, poems I can rhyme. Flesh and bone illusions fade, my spirit does rejoice. You are the only one we need to remember. You are the only one who can lead us to Lord Krishna. And so, Srila Prabhupada, we are grateful. We're very grateful, Srila Prabhupada. We had grown so tired of our foolish games. Now life can be sweet victory. When we love you and please you and take the ways you taught us so completely and so carefully, our future depends on how well we follow you, always. Srila Prabhupada, we looked for you, but you had gone forever. No, we couldn't bear the pain, but your words remain. They take us to a world beyond all time and space. We are with you once again. The time is right, the tide is turning. Another distant harbor, your boat to come ashore. So many million souls in cages burning. Most of them just look away, but a handful look for more. I'll read the other one. And this one is called, When You Changed Us. Calcutta City never looked so pretty as that day in 1896. Soft September skies and cool gas lights. Horse-drawn hackneys traveled quick. In a mud-walled shack beneath a leaning jackfruit tree, you took your birth. No common boy who would just play with toys. One astrologer saw your worth. At 70, he'll cross the sea and plant upon a barren soil the seed of bhakti so Krishna Shakti can inundate the world. Srila Prabhupada, we didn't know you. When would you come at last? In Maya's clutches, without so much as a promise from our darkened past. You shone the light, took away the night, and neatly rearranged us. Hellbound dogs turned devotee cogs when you changed us. You kindly changed us. New York City never seemed so gritty as that fall of 1965. Tawdry bars, honking motor cars, billboard lures spawned the city's drive. Derelicts slept across tenement steps amidst stores geared to passion's way. Trapped in our shell of this homemade hell, we Westerners looked out at gray. Srila Prabhupada, we needed you. When would you come at last? In Maya's clutches, without so much as a prayer from our darkened past. Misery drew its curtain, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever change us. Stubborn to the core at fantasy's door. Then you changed us. You somehow changed us. Calcutta City did glow so pretty in the year of 1996. Big festoons with bright balloons and children running lickety-split. Devotees have praised in thousands of ways all you've done and what you've given. We proudly announce how you built a house the entire world can live in. No booth or slideshow can glorify you the amount which you deserve, but we must try to show people why. It's Prabhupada they should serve. They should serve. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So our next speaker will be Mother Vidya.
We can't hear you.
So Mother Vijay is disciple of Srila Prabhupada from early 70s, late 60s,
Yeah, 70s.
early 70s, and she's mostly resides in Vrindavan, married to Bhaktisiddhanta, the famous artist and sculptor, and we're very fortunate to have her here with us today. She's taking a break from her service in the kitchen and come and share some memories of Prabhupada with us. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Lovely to see you all in this difficult times. Yeah. Krishna's still here and we're learning so much. Like this? Okay. I don't talk very loudly, I don't think anyway. Okay. So I happen to have the rare opportunity to have been present at the time that Srila Prabhupada left the planet. I happen to just have that fortunate thing. I think it was probably because from the time I joined the movement, I had wanted to be Prabhupada's personal servant. And I was too late. That was finished and only sannyasis were serving him. So I always felt he allowed me to be there because of that. So he had been ill for a long time and no one really thought he was ever going to leave, that he was just increasing our separation and feelings of separation from him. And then he didn't leave for months and months, but he was in a very weakened condition. And even minutes before he left his body, he was still translating the Bhagavatam. The microphone was there. He was still speaking into it. The devotees were there listening to his translations minutes before he left, giving us the example of how we should also serve to the minute before we go. This is Prabhupada. So the day that he was going to leave his body, he actually announced it, and they asked for all the devotees to come in attendance. Previous to this, he had told his devotees who were serving him that he was going to leave soon, and he would like all of his disciples to come to Vrindavan for this passage. I was so excited when I heard. I thought, oh my gosh, we've got to get down to Fogel Ashram. We've got to start cleaning. You know, all the devotees are going to be here. How will we have enough room to house them all? And then there was nothing else came out about it. I almost thought, well, maybe I heard wrong. But he had asked that everyone come. I think that the devotees who were in charge of the temples felt that if the devotees continued to distribute books, that this would somehow be very pleasing to Prabhupada. And so that's sort of what happened. So there were just this a group of a few hundred devotees there when he actually left. One wonderful thing that Prabhupada did reveal to us in those last days, two things actually. One of them was that Krishna had come to him to thank him for all his divine service that he had rendered, and told him how pleased he was with all of his service and all the austerities he performed in saving all of us. So he asked, Prabhupada said that Krishna asked him what benediction he would like. And as far as I know, like everyone else said, your service is benediction. But in the end, Prabhupada asked that our lives be extended so that we would have longer to become Krishna conscious. And you can see we're living quite ripe old ages, as are even the people in the towns and villages around us. So the benediction was not only for his disciples, but also for everyone to have a longer chance to become Krishna conscious. And you can see, as the older we get, the more experiences we have that are humiliating to us, as well as how we comprehend what real service means, and how every word in his books has divine and deep meaning for all of us. And if we keep reading and rereading, that transcendental nature of the literature becomes a reality, and we understand on so many different levels what one sentence means, what one word means. Oh, it just keeps getting better and better. So, it's the day that Srila Prabhupada was going to leave, and he calls us all there, and his room becomes packed with devotees. Very hot day, even though it was in November, as far as I know. November 14th, I think, is when he left. But it was an unseasonably warm fall, even for Vrindavan. The days are generally very cool, hot, and the nights cool. But in that particular period of time, it was pretty warm day and night. And so we then were there, and there was kirtan going on. And most of us could not see, because there were just a few devotees just surrounding his bed that were able to really partake of Prabhupada and what he was, how he looked and what he was doing and what he was saying. And it went on for hours. So we were beginning to think that perhaps it was again just another of Prabhupada's abilities to make us more and more attached to him. And so various people would get up and they'd leave, and then they'd come back, and then they'd leave again. And it was almost time for Sundar Artik. So my husband and I, we went back to the Goshala where we were living. We took our showers, we got dressed for the evening program, and came back, and we stood at the guest house gate and said to each other, what should we do? Should we go to Artik, or should we go to Prabhupada's house? Which would be more pleasing to him? And we decided, luckily, to go to Prabhupada's house. And at that time, there were only perhaps 40 or 50 devotees there. And the chanting was going on in a much more intense fashion than it had been in the day. And I was actually sewing on a tulsi skirt, and I sat on the edge of the fireplace in Prabhupada's room, and thought that, oh, this is such wonderful vibrations that will go into this skirt. This will be so lovely, and hopefully Prabhupada won't actually leave his body. But as very shortly after that, because of course Sundar Artik is at 7, and by 7:21, Prabhupada left. So in that 20 minutes, so many things transpired. The kirtan became unbelievably transcendental. It sounded like voices that we had never heard before. And everyone sort of jumped up and sort of went up to where where Prabhupada was in his bed. So even though we were standing maybe 3 or 4 legions back, we were all sort of able to see him somehow magically. And this kirtan was beyond anything you've ever heard. And I remember standing on my toes and realizing that my voice was in there too. My voice was also sounding like that. And I thought, the demigods are here. I'm sure this must be the demigods. We don't sound like this. And as that was going on, it was as if we were all lifted up, and we were no longer standing on the floor. It was like we were going up and up, almost traveling with him as he left. And then there was just a moment of silence. And then it was like clunk. And we were back in our bodies in his room. One devotee, a man who's from the LA temple, I'm sorry I don't remember his name, a Spanish devotee, disciple of Prabhupada's, started wailing and moaning and sobbing. Some of the other devotees were trying to not pacify him, but almost like make him be quiet. And I thought, and later I realized more and more, how he was perhaps the only one who instantly got how hard this was going to be. And I saw him here when I came back to LA, and I think in the Smartin Final or somewhere. I said, please come to the temple and tell your feelings during that time. So we were all ushered out of Prabhupada's house, and we stood in the garden thinking that they were going to come out and say, it's not true, he hasn't left. Because the feeling of like, there's a picture that I think maybe Jadharani painted very early on of the gopis when Krishna disappeared. And they all have their mouths open wide and their eyes open wide. And they're searching everywhere. They're looking under the flowers. They're looking at each other. They cannot believe that he's disappeared. So it was similar to that. The devotees standing there waiting to hear that Prabhupada had not really left. And then they prepared him, they bathed him, they dressed him, and they brought him in a palanquin into the temple, and there was an all-night kirtan that went on. But it turned absolutely freezing cold that night. It had been very balmy, very lovely, as it always is wherever Prabhupada went. If you notice, wherever he was, the temperature, the climate was always just like perfect. Perfect. If it rained, he must have needed to write that day, or but you know, it was always the climate was wonderful. So after he left, it became bitter cold. And in the morning at Mangal Artik, when they opened the deities, you know, our hearts were just like, what do we do? And it looked as if Krishna was grinning. Ha! I have him now. But previous to this, in all the classes that he was giving, just before he left his body, he would come into the temple. They would bring him in, not in a palanquin, but on a rocking chair. 4 of his disciples would carry him in. He would pay his pranams in front of all of the deities, and then he would sit under the tamal tree. And Satchidananda, one of his disciples, had tiny, tiny little kartals, and they would play a very, very simple kirtan, and the Gurukula boys would dance. 1 or 2 of the boys would get up and dance, and Prabhupada would sit and nod. He didn't really rock, but he would nod. And there was no speaking. We just all sat in silence with this little kirtan, chanting Hare Krishna, teaching us how to communicate with him after he left. Whether or not we understood that our relationship with him was more than with his vapu, whether we had already acknowledged that we had a subtle relationship with Prabhupada, or a relationship on so many levels, whether we realized it before or not during this particular part of his sojourn with us, he was definitely teaching us that his classes would go on as long as we would be willing to hear him. And so many realizations would come. I mean, they always come. Whenever you think of Prabhupada, whenever you think of Guru, Shastra, Sadhu, you know, so many realizations, when practically whatever question you ask in your mind gets answered if we're just good enough at hearing the answers. That's how connected they have made us to the spiritual information and the spiritual world. So I don't know that he was that worried about leaving us here. I'm sure he knew we were going to struggle individually, collectively, but in struggling we become purified, as always. And the struggle becomes perfect. So chant, dance, and be happy. Simple process. We're the ones complicating it. Okay. Yeah. He did want to go. He wanted to go around Govardhan. Govardhan Puja happened just a few days before. 3 days, I guess. Was Govardhan Puja 2 or 3 days? And he did want to go, and his disciples who were caring for him decided it would be too dangerous and that he might leave his body on Parikram. I remember thinking that would be glorious if he left on the Parikram, but, I guess they became very concerned about prolonging his life and perhaps even hoping that he would become well again. Yeah. He was 81, right, when he left his body? I believe he was 81. For them to go around Govardhan? Yeah, it was all arranged. And the devotees did go, and they took his little murti with them. It was Palika's murti of Prabhupada that went. Must have, yeah. No, he must have said okay. Yes, no, I don't think he said that he insisted that he needed to go. He did not insist to go, as far as I know. Yeah. But he did want to go, and yeah, he did want to go. Perhaps if everybody had been there, I'm sure he would have gone. It was quite amazing, actually. One time, some Brijbasi who's sort of part of one of the major temples there came up and said, "Your devotees are very good at births and deaths. We don't know what you do in between, but the births and deaths are very good." Still. Very much so, including the whole of Vrindavan. It was quite amazing. We were so distraught, everyone. I don't remember even seeing people that I was so close to in those few days right after Prabhupada left. Your mind was just completely boggled. And you felt the grief of the devotees not present as well. So it was really quite major. And all of Vrindavan was grief-stricken and amazed, basically in shock, and they were so responsive as we brought Prabhupada on Parikram to all the major temples the next day, and they all came out with major gifts and pranams and lined the streets of Vrindavan in a way that we'd never seen before. Vrindavan was much more simple then. It wasn't so business-like as it is now. The people were just simple Brijbasis, just sort of struggling economically to sort of make it and that kind of thing. All this mercy really that's come from Prabhupada in helping them to see that economic development doesn't mean anything. But they've gotten to live through the whole thing, and the opulence that Krishna consciousness has brought, or ISKCON has brought to Vrindavan, is very palpable to them as well as to all of us who are there. Oh, well, there was, of course, no samadhi, but they immediately started making preparations, and they brought in huge quantities of salt. And also, and they started digging the very night that Prabhupada left. Basically, while the kirtan was going on in the temple, the devotees were starting to dig the samadhi. And so by the time we got back from the parakram, somehow mystically it all sort of happened, and the huge hole was there. It was probably 7 by 7, 6 by 6, something like that, and very deep, at least 6, 7 feet deep. They had to put a ladder in, and people had to climb up and down, bringing the dirt out, bringing the salt and the sand. Oh, I didn't bring, I should bring next time. Oh, then they built a little house on top of it where they put a picture of Prabhupada that was considered the Samadhi. And we all were doing 24-hour kirtan, keeping Prabhupada company in his Samadhi. Well, we were outside. The Samadhi was just that big, 6 feet by 6 feet. Yeah, a little house. And it was like that forever because they had to, first we had to grieve, and then we had to be well enough to be able to start making plans about what we were going to do in order to commemorate this person that's beyond commemoration. So, yeah. Yes, I was there. It was rather monumental. There were a lot of devotees coming from all over the world, and already sort of the the segmentation sort of was a bit apparent. Younger devotees were coming and saying their guru was the next Prabhupada. And I was going, what? What are you talking about? Yeah, it was already there. So the gurus who were very attached to Vrindavan came and sent and had their devotees come. The ones that weren't as attached did not come. But then there were quite a lot of Prabhupada's disciples that came the next year. It was mostly for Prabhupada's disappearance. Then, Kartik became popular quite a bit after that. I'd say probably maybe 5-10 years after that. It kept building in its prominence. Am I talking too long? No. Yeah.
Thank you, Mother Richard. That was ecstatic. Thank you. We're just going to have to get ready for the for the Pushpanja. So sorry. Right, thank you. Hare Krishna. Siddhanta Prabhu, would you like to? Sure. So you must sit there and okay.
How many minutes do I have? 10 minutes? I'll just read a couple of stories. Is there a light, Prabhu, is there a light? Is it plugged in? Batteries? Oh, I don't know where you're going to plug it in. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulamitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Can you hear me okay through the mask? Okay. So, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, I've been working the last 5 years and putting together this latest volume 5 of the Memory Series. And as I sent it to the printer, there were various changes that had to be made, and it kept pushing back the date that they would be able to deliver it to me. So by Krishna's mercy and Prabhupada's mercy, it came yesterday. So this is a nice timing for honoring Prabhupada's Disappearance Day. And I'll just read a couple of stories from the book. Oh, great. That's great. Thank you. I was recently on a Zoom meeting with Russian devotees last week that was arranged by Mondachini. And so we spoke for a couple hours. The last half hour was open for questions and answers. And one devotee from Russia asked what was the common theme amongst all the devotees that I've interviewed over the last 30 years. And then what came to mind immediately was Prabhupada's compassion. So I'll read a story here from Burijan, who I interviewed at Govardhan, talking about Govardhan. See if I can find it. So this is Burijan, who explained during the interview that he was having a very difficult time in Hong Kong. He and his wife were having it was very austere. And they were having a very hard time, especially his wife. So this is, he's recounting here his personal association with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada did come to Hong Kong. This is Burijan speaking. Prabhupada asked me in a very personal way, how is your wife doing with this? He understood that she had actually sacrificed so much to join the movement. He used to say that she sacrificed 3 things. 1, she was an actress, quite an up-and-coming actress, and she gave that up. 2, she had gone to Hong Kong on Prabhupada's order. And 3, she had married me, which was, of course, an austerity. It was an arranged marriage, and on top of that, we were married on the first day we met. That's so culturally impossible for someone brought up in the West, but she did it. And after 50 years, we are still married. It was just Prabhupada's mercy. In any case, he very much appreciated her, and he asked me how my wife was doing. I said, not very good. She is struggling. He said, bring her in. So I brought her in, and then he directed her to sit in front of him. He took off a ring from his finger, a gold ring, and he gave it to her. Of course she melted, and she still has that ring today. But this was a very different Prabhupada than Prabhupada just sitting on the Vyasasana. Most of the devotees had that relationship with him, the defender of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, the Shinga Guru, sitting on the Vyasasana. That was one aspect of Prabhupada. Prabhupada had many aspects. In this case, Prabhupada's presence obviously really helped her. His presence gave us life. Not only for us, but his presence was the life of the movement. I am sure she would be more emotional than I am right now remembering it. But if she were sitting here next to me, we'd both need towels. She still has the ring, of course. It's her life. What could you have that is more of a treasure than that? Because it's a gesture of the person's affection, deep affection. The two are mixed together and are inseparable. So that's an example of Prabhupada's being personal with his disciples and compassionate. He was not just going to let her suffer there without any reciprocation of love. So this next story is from Saha Devi. She started here in Los Angeles. She was initiated with Dinabandhu and Jayatirtha. So it goes back. It's a rather involved story, but it's a very significant one. It shows Prabhupada's heart and what his real desire for us as his disciples and devotees is. She, in her interview, says, I learned a very valuable lesson when I got Srila Prabhupada's darshan in Vrindavan in 1974. At that time, it was very difficult to have any personal contact with Srila Prabhupada because he had his army of captains and generals around him. I was a mom with 2 little children, and in India, it was no easy task with 2 babies. Prior to having my children, I did so much service like Sankirtan, puppet shows, and so many other things in Los Angeles. But in India, I had to take care of these 2 babies constantly. I couldn't even go on the altar. I couldn't go in the kitchen. It was very different for me. But I guess I was happy to be there because I could go on parikramas and I could hear lectures every day in the temple room. And sometimes I would go by Prabhupada's door, but I'd see that there was just no way to get in there. Prior to this, when I was in Mayapur, there was a situation where I was rejected by one of the senior devotees who called me lazy. And I felt rejected. So I thought to myself, there is no way I can please Prabhupada because I am a woman and because I have children. I really believed that at that time. That's how I was feeling, and we know the history of women in ISKCON, so I felt kind of hopeless. Then one evening after Sundar Artik, I was walking from the temple room up to the guest house where Prabhupada's quarters were, and I saw that nobody was guarding the door. I thought, this is my chance. This is it. I'm going in there now. I walked in the door, and there was only one brahmachari who was leaning up against the wall, covered in his chadar, chanting japa. Srila Prabhupada was there at his desk reading with one leg up and doing various things. I sat down in the middle of the room and I started chanting. I was sitting there with Srila Prabhupada, and I felt like I would not be able to please Prabhupada because I had heard that the senior devotee told Prabhupada that I was lazy. So I was really brokenhearted to think Prabhupada would think that I was lazy. Not that I am not lazy, but I felt hopeless because there was just no way that I was going to please Prabhupada or do anything right at that point. Anyhow, Srila Prabhupada was there, so I mustered up the courage, and with folded hands I approached Prabhupada. He looked up at me and smiled, so I knew I could speak. I said, Srila Prabhupada, and I got out a few words, but I just started crying, completely sobbing. And she, on the video, she really lets out a huge, deep, internal sob. That's how she said. I mean, it was deep crying, like I should have been in therapy. Prabhupada sat there as I cried, and I finally blurted out, Prabhupada, I am a woman. There is no way I can please you. I am a woman and I have children, and they say I am lazy now. Srila Prabhupada at that point raised his arm back, and he had a big smile on his face. When he smiled, I thought, oh my gosh, how could he think my grief was something to smile about? Because I was so sad. But with that smile, he embraced me. Then he leaned close to me and asked, are you reading my books? That's what he said to me. Are you reading my books? And I was reading his books, because that's one thing that moms can do when we are breastfeeding. We can read books. I had read all the way up to the book that Prabhupada had just finished writing. So I said to Prabhupada, yes, Srila Prabhupada, I am reading your books. Then he said, then you are pleasing me. I was so grateful, and I felt so much love. That's why I say his unconditional love changed my life. So we can keep that in our hearts.
Krishna, Jai, thank you.
Srila Prabhupada,
Thank you, Srila.
Ki Jai.
So our next speaker will be Mother Jagajanani. That was, who was the person whose story you were just telling? What was the story? Who was the name of the person whose story you were just... Sahadevi.
Hare Krishna. Dear Srila Prabhupada, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to your unlimited kindness that you continue to shower upon us. We are very grateful for your constant help and encouragement. Srila Prabhupada, you have given us and shown us all that we need to become serious and to go back home, back to Godhead. This is very amazing and exciting, and yet somehow seems so far away and difficult. I pray to you and Lord Krishna that I can develop a burning desire to hear and chant attentively with real sincerity. Srila Prabhupada, you are our most precious everything, and we want to continue trying to advance in Krishna consciousness because of you. Thank you, dear spiritual master, for this opportunity. Please allow me to serve eternally. Your disciple, Jaga Janani Dasi.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Nisringananda Prabhu?
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Bacharnane Nivesesa Shunyavadi Pascha Chadeshatarane. So in preparation, I've shared before here, my past history kind of gets boring for me. So I wanted to just review and glorify a little bit of what Srila Prabhupada is and bring someone else. I brought someone else with me who's not been coming to this temple to share a little bit also. The total word count for all of Srila Prabhupada's documents is almost 19 million words that he left us. And when you look on Vanipedia and you use the phrase, reading my books, Srila Prabhupada repeats it in the books 7 times, in the lectures 36 times, conversations 67 times, and in the letters 213 times, reading my books. So that's the books 2%, letters almost 66%. Conversations 21%, lectures 11%. If we look at distributing my books as a phrase, the Prabhupada said, he said it in his books 15 times, his lectures 40 times, his conversations 153 times, his letters 466 times. If we look at publishing my books, he said it in the books 25 times, lectures 125 times, conversations 301 times. And in his letters, he said publishing my books 829 times. So, with only 2% of the instructions and encouragement given in his books regarding these subjects, it'd be hard to present Srila Prabhupada's intent, and that's why we share these experiences of our own through our memories. That's why we share and read others. That's why we read the conversations. That's why we read the lectures. That's why we read the letters. In a letter to Prana in 1977, in July 20th, Prabhupada says, does he think he will find something else in these transcriptions that are not in my books? And the answer is yes, as we see. That's why we're here to embellish and glorify the pure devotee from those 19 million words that he left us, and acts of compassion, as Siddhanta had just said. So sometimes, due to my neophyte tendencies, I've misconstrued some of his instructions from those books. I become dogmatic. I remember when I heard the instruction in Brooklyn, New York, never be alone in a room with a woman, even if she's your mother. And when my mother came to New York to see me because I was very ill, although I didn't know it myself, guess who wouldn't be in a room alone with his own mother? Sometimes just understanding things from one perspective gives a one-dimensional view of the actual intent of the spiritual master. So I have no doubt in my mind that in 108 years, devotees will be so grateful to have all of the wealth of Srila Prabhupada's association, and it will help all of them serve his mission that much better. In our discussions in the Sabha, of which I'm chairman, that's the Spiritual Advisory Bhagavad Assembly, created 2.5 years ago, it has become apparent to us that to establish Srila Prabhupada's presence and position within ISKCON, the availability of all of these teachings is absolutely essential. And books, of course, always carry that unique presence of Srila Prabhupada. They're the foundation, they're the base. But the letters, the lectures, the conversation, when you put them all together, we have a complete picture of Srila Prabhupada. And that Vani is there for us to explore, and we can understand it for generations to come. Actually, the books contain only 24% of the total Vani of Srila Prabhupada. So it's really vital that we continue to have available to all of us books about Prabhupada, conversations, lectures, and videos also, because that will give us a fuller picture. So I brought someone today just to share a couple of pastimes, because I'm doing a study actually with the not the sanction, but with the encouragement of Brahma Muhurta at the BBT. I'm doing a study. What were Prabhupada's instructions regarding the paintings? How did he embellish what he gave us in his books with personal instructions regarding the paintings? And it's really fascinating because it's not really been done in a systematic way. And it glorifies him. When you hear what I'm going to read, you'll see exactly the personality that we're dealing with Srila Prabhupada. So I'm reading from Jadharani's book, she's also known as Shamarani, The Art of Spiritual Life. And I picked out the time when I was working in the press in Brooklyn. And, you know, it was just myself. Bhargava was there. Murali, who else was there? A number of other people. And these letters were coming in from Srila Prabhupada about the paintings. And, of course, she would share, as we all did in those days. We were very excited to share letters from Srila Prabhupada because they applied answers to all of us. So she said, in my letter, I had also asked him some questions about our paintings for the first canto, which was full with narrations of the Lord's incarnations. We had many references of Indian paintings and sculptures, but we didn't know which were accurate. I was reminded that only the pure devotee could solve this dilemma by hearing over the loudspeaker system. So Prabhupada writes, if you know Krishna, you know everything. You know science, you know mathematics, you know philosophy, you know geography, everything. There's no dearth of knowledge. Don't think that if one is a Krishna conscious person, actually he can be a foolish man. No, that's a given guarantee in the Bhagavad Gita 10:11. A devotee who is always in Krishna consciousness, for him there's nothing unknown. He knows everything, just like we can give information to the whole creation. Not only of this material world, of the spiritual world. Clear conception. Where is where, what is what, everything. That is Krishna consciousness. The more you make progress, then you are fully, I mean to say, conversant with all departmental knowledge. Everything is complete. So his answer regarding the demigods was clear and definitive, as was his answer about the Lord's incarnations. My dear Jadharani, please accept my blessings and offer the same to the other artists. I am in due receipt of your letter dated May 8th, 1971, and have noted the contents carefully. So far as your questions are concerned, they are as follows. The demigods mentioned by you appear just like man, but very beautiful and very nice features also. They're also having fair complexion with golden hue. Golden means milk mixed with a tint of reddish color or yellowish color. Lord Shiva has 2 arms. Garuda is yellow in color. Kapila Dev looks like a human being, as does Kalki. Kalki is bluish. Matsya is full fish, bluish in color. Kurma is a tortoise color. Jadharani continues, the first canto described in fascinating, vivid details the events leading up to the retirement of the Pandavas, who are Krishna's associates, in his Dwarka pastimes. The text stated that the Pandavas attained the spiritual sky in their self-same bodies. Not clear about this, I asked, does this mean that the soul and not the body entered the Lord's spiritual abode? Or does it mean that Arjuna was already in a spiritual body and that his so-called material body and spiritual body were the same? I assumed that since Arjuna was Krishna's cousin and dear friend, his body must have been spiritual. And Prabhupada replied, self-same body means looking like a material body. Any devotee always is in a spiritual body, although it may appear material. I also asked about the options. The Gita's message was intended for the entire world and not simply for a certain class of people, with a view to making the paintings more accessible to those unfamiliar with Vedic culture. I asked if, where appropriate, we could sometimes paint devotees with hair and in Western dress. In this way, people would not consider his mission to be sectarian or Indian. Yeah. Almost done? His reply, regarding painting for the Bhagavad Gita, yes, occasionally devotees may be pictured with full head of hair instead of shika. You should use your own discretion. The garb can be Vedic or American. There's no harm. Dress has nothing to do with the soul. This is our Prabhupada. This is that compassionate Prabhupada that has somehow carried us all through to this point. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Well, it's a deep.
My dearest Srila Prabhupada, please accept my humble obeisances in the dust of your lotus feet. All glories unto you. By some causeless mercy, I came in contact with your divine grace, although I was just a foolish young girl. Surrendering to you was the most auspicious moment of my life. In fact, whatever is auspicious in my life is due only to your mercy. Without the mercy of the Guru, the living entity wastes this valuable human form of life and is forced back down into countless lower births, simply due to ignorance of the purpose of human life. You lifted us up, and then you left us everything we would need to make advancement. You gave us the chance to live in your temples without anxiety, to chant the Maha Mantra, hear your lectures, read your books, discuss the philosophy with other Vaishnavas, take darshan of the deities, and do devotional service. Nearly every day I think that a chance like this is very rare, and you've made it so easy for us. How foolish if we don't use this opportunity wisely. You have given us the rarest of gifts, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and the association with your divine grace. The misfortune of the conditioned souls is that they have not yet been given the knowledge or the mercy. So in some way, we must assist you in your mission. Please forgive our failings and faults. We are so long without your association, so forgetful, so quick to commit offenses, so weak without your loving guidance. Please bless me to have your divine association again. You are everything, Srila Prabhupada. You've saved the entire world, and you've saved me. Your most foolish servant to thee.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Jai. So we have 3 speakers left, and we have 15 minutes left. I got permission to go 5 minutes overtime. So, Srivas Prabhu, you want to...
Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Stavale Simarabati Venanta Swamini Chanamani. Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Vicharani Nirvisation Simvarabhaskichari Satarani. I never had the opportunity to associate with Srila Prabhupada personally. I was close to him, maybe this close a few times, but never really had an opportunity to exchange. One particular time, but I've mentioned that time so many times that it can be a little bit hackneyed, but I'm only saying that because really, when you want to write something about Prabhupada, it just comes from the heart, and so I wrote these things yesterday and want to share them with you. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as rain cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master extinguishes the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my most humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. Dear Srila Prabhupada, the great poet Narottam Das has sung, Shri Guru Charanirati Aise Uttama Gati. Attachment to the lotus feet of one's guru is the perfection which fulfills all desires. How is it that I, who was very expert at sinning, been given this opportunity, this chance to attain the perfection of self-realization? This is your causeless mercy upon me. By your grace, you traveled everywhere to benedict the most fallen souls of this age of Kali. Wherever your lotus feet touched the ground, devotees came forth and temples manifested. Your mission was given to you by Lord Chaitanya himself, who commanded that anyone who takes birth in the land of Bharatvarsha is responsible for spreading this Sankirtan movement to the rest of the world. You came and fulfilled that prophecy as foretold by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I, as your disciple, am most fallen, and I have nothing to offer you in return, except the opportunity to assist you in this mission to save the world. In my quiet moments, I think of you and how fortunate I feel that you have given me the opportunity to serve you here in New Dwarkadam. I marvel at your knowledge of the Vedas. I become giddy with happiness hearing you speak from the Bhagavatam, and I feel immense relief from the pangs of this material world when I hear you. When I think of you, I am simply amazed, and my heart fills with respect and affection for you, Srila Prabhupada. Because never let me think, and please, never let me think or consider you to be an ordinary man. Any gentleman will readily accept will accept that you are Lord Krishna's most confidential servitor. And this is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna himself. For one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, devotional service is guaranteed. And at the end, he will come to me. There's no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there be one more dear. Srila Prabhupada, please help me to rid myself of causeless mundane ambitions, and by your causeless mercy, can I become purified by rendering and serving you and remaining under the shelter of your instructions. You have kindly accepted me as your disciple, therefore my only business now is to please you. To please the spiritual master means to receive his blessings. Without the blessings of the spiritual master, no one can make spiritual advancement. Therefore I pray to you to give me the strength and heart to carry on your mission of preaching Krishna consciousness. Your servant, Savasdas.
Hari Bol, thank you. Hare Krishna. Naikatma Prabhu, please. If there's a little commotion, because they're going to, while you're speaking, they're going to be getting ready for the Pushpanjali, so just please don't be distracted, everybody. And Naikatma and then Bhargava, and then that'll wrap up. Everybody. Okay, great.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastavadare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitanamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharni Sesa Shinyavari Prasacharastane. I didn't write anything, and neither did I think I was going to speak, so I'll just make it very brief. Like so many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples and followers, when Srila Prabhupada left physically, there was a great void in my life. I remember exactly where I was at and what I was doing. We were in Minneapolis airport doing some books. And Minneapolis was a very difficult place. There were a lot of employees that really gave us a hard time. And there was a thing going on during that time where pilots, airline pilots, would go around with these little clicker things. So every time you'd be talking to some person, one of the employees or an airline pilot would walk by and stand next to you, and they would start clicking just to intimidate the person you were speaking to. So it was a common thing, especially in Minneapolis. It was really challenging. It was a difficult place to do book distribution. But I remember this one morning, as I was standing there, just before that, there was this one person, some people may know him as Hubert Humphrey, who came through the airport. And I tried to approach him to give him a book. Hubert Humphrey was a presidential candidate at the time. And he just walked by, but one of his assistants took a book. So I felt, okay, well, at least there's some benefit there. Shortly after that, this airline pilot came up to me. He came up to me, and I was thinking, oh, great, another argument. And the first thing he said was, I just wanted to offer my condolences. I'm very sorry for your loss. And I said, well, what are you talking about? He said, well, I just heard that your spiritual master passed away. And that's how I heard it. But from that exchange, I could understand that Prabhupada's person was so special that even those people who were antagonistic and had no respect for at least us, at least they could respect this wonderful personality, Srila Prabhupada. And I felt gratified at least. at least I'm in the right place in this Krishna consciousness movement. And even though Srila Prabhupada is not with us, we can understand that he's always there with us, that he's watching us. 2 days ago, I had this dream. I shared it with my wife, that Srila Prabhupada was in his room, and I walked into his room, and he was leaning back with his leg up, and he was just relaxing. His eyes were closed. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful sight. And I walked out, and I went into the temple room, and Srila Prabhupada came into the temple room as well. And I offered my obeisances, and I sat up, and I started chanting Gayatri. And Prabhupada was looking over, watching me as I was doing my fingers. And it was such a vivid experience. But from that I could understand that Srila Prabhupada is always there, and he's watching over us. Even we may not see it, but the pure devotee, the exalted Savior of the Western world, of the whole world, is still there with us. So, thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for accepting me. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
And last but not least, we're going to give the final word. Bhagavapu, please.
I was what they used to call in the photo department a nectar buzzard. Oh, I'm Rita. Because I was following Prabhupada around as much as possible. I was trained in photography. I was going to be a documentary photographer, hoped to work for Life magazine, but it closed down just after I joined the movement. Anyway, so I wanted to document Prabhupada. My own background is I came from a Jewish background, and I saw a lot of my grandparents' family were destroyed in World War II and the Holocaust. And when I studied history, I understood a lot of that crap was coming from bad religious teachings. Anyway, when I discovered Krishna consciousness, this seemed like the answer to solve all the world's problems. A God that was fun and loving, what to speak of goddess. Anyway, from what I learned from Prabhupada was Jadharani asked me to ask if Prabhupada was present in his pictures. When I asked him, he said, if you think of me, then I am there. Well, I told this to Punyatma, who just passed away a few months ago. And he did a very beautiful thing with the quote. And he started developing Manas Puja on his own. And within his mind, he was offering garlands to all the incarnations, to the different demigods. He would chant the different names of God in different religions as well. So this is Manas Puja. And 2 minutes, right? So this is called Manas Puja. And it's available to all of us, and it's sweeter in many ways because there's no social pressure. You're just doing that out of your own heart. I asked Prabhupada, sometimes I have a problem that's too detailed for the scriptures. What should I do? He said, if you chant Hare Krishna very nicely, all the answers will come from within. When Lord Rama was attacked by Bali for not being dharmic because he shot him while he was fighting, Lord Ram got angry at him. He said, you're just a monkey. You're sleeping with your brother's wife while he's still alive? And then he said, he tried to explain, because Bali has tried to use Dharma as an excuse. He said, the intricacies of Dharma are not easily understood, and the ultimate discriminator must be one's own conscience. So Prabhupada gave me 2 answers about problems. That was one of them. If you chant Hare Krishna very nicely, all the answers will come from in. He also said, all the answers are in my books. So the thing he wanted more than anything else is for us to love Krishna. That's the bottom line. And Lord Chaitanya's teaching was to hear the pastimes. As you hear the pastimes, you'll find a particular mood of Krishna that charms you. And that's why he did the Krishna books early. I'm getting the boot? Okay, I got the boot. from a lotus foot. Thank you.
I don't know, is it? Is that there? Om Agyana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Jaina Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paskacha Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Sarasvati Namine Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayine Pabhave Namaha Madhuyojvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namo Stute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Pasadanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gorkishoraya Shatsad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralamba Rasambode Padambujaya Te Namaha Namo Bhaktivinodaya Satchit Ananda Namine Gaura Shakti Sarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Virbhava Bhumes Tvam Nirdeshta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Sri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratusve Namaha Panchatatvakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhaktasaktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Bangor Mama Mandamatir Gati Matsarvasva Padambujao Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpa Drumada Srimad Ratnagara Singhasana Sto Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prishtalibhi Sevyamano Smarami Sriman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsi Vata Tata Shtita Karshan Venu Svanayar Gopir Gopinata Shriye Stuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we say Prabhupada's prana mantra. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paskachade Satarane Pushpanjali Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paskachade Satarine Esha Pushpanjali Ki Jai. Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paskacha Desatarine Esha Pushpanjali Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
You're the expert.
If nobody else is going to. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Thank you, you play. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bandhanue Savadhana Mate Bandhanue Savadhana Mate Jara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatari Aja Jara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatari Aja Krishna Prapti Hoi Jahan Hoite Krishna Prapti Hoi Jahan Hoite Mukha Padma Bhaktya Chitete Koriya Aikya Guru Mukha Padma Bhaktya Chitete Koriya Aikya Anakori Homane Asha Anakori Homane Asha Sri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utamagate Sri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utamagate De prasade pure sarva asha De prasade pure sarva asha Chakudana dilo de janme janme Prabhu se Chakudana dilo de janme janme Prabhu se Divya Gyan Hide Pragam Sito Divya Gyan Hide Pragam Sito Preme Bhakti Jahoite Avidya Vinasha Jate Preme Bhakti Jahoite Avidya Vinasha Jate Vidigai Jaracharito Vidigai Jaracharito Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu Lokena Lokera Jivana Srila Prabhupada Lokera Jivana Jayo Prabhupada Lokera Divana. Ah Prabhu Karo Daya Deho More Pada Chaya. Ah Prabhu Karo Daya Deho More Pada Chaya. Ebe Das Kuso Tribhuvana. Ebe Das Kuso Tribhuvana. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana. Srila Prabhupada Loyala Sharana. Ah Prabhu Kara Daya Deho More Pada Chaya. Ah Prabhu Kara Daya Deho More Pada Chaya. Ebe Das Kuso Tribhuvana. Hey Prabhupada Patita Pavana. Jaya Prabhupada Patita Pavana. Jaya Prabhupada Loyala Sharana. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vindani. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hey, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Gaura Hare Nitai. Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Baladev, Jai Subhadra. Jai Rukmini Dwarkadesh, Rukmini Dwarkadesh, Rukmini Dwarkadesh, Rukmini Dwarkadesh. Jaya Rukmini Dwarkanath, Rukmini Dwarkanath, Rukmini Dwarkanath, Rukmini Dwarkanath. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Gaur Haribo. Nitai Gaur Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Haribo. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Gaur Haribo. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Gaur Haribo. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Gaur Haribo. Gaur Premanande, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paripurna Acharya. Asatara Sri Maharaj Divine Sabhai Channaram in the Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Come with the founder charges Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananda Guru Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Nama Acharya Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se Gaha Sakista Chaitanya Bhavanathananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shami Radha Kun Giri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Mathura Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki jai. Purushottam Shatya Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Shri Dwarka Dham ki jai. Shri Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish ki jai. Samavera Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari 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 Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga.
Namaste Narasringhaya. Namaste Narasringhaya.